But let's talk to Professor Anthony Glees. He's from the Centre for Security and Intelligence Studies at the University of Buckingham. Anthony, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us. We haven't spoken for a little while. I mean, I suppose this might turn into a quite wide-ranging conversation, if you don't mind, because, I mean, it's not just about Huawei anymore, the Chinese thing, is it? It's about China.
It is indeed about China, and I think we are seeing a kind of merging of the 5G issue with a much wider angst about China, about the role that China could play in our affairs in Europe, and it's kind of symbolized by the fact that we've seen people, claiming that 5G masts are spreading coronavirus, that's a Chinese plot to destabilise.
There's a one-fact denial of that story, right? Because there's only apparently 5 countries in the world that actually have 5G masts. So if that was actually true, coronavirus would only be in 5 countries.
Absolutely. It is complete nonsense. And in fact, ever since the invention of radio waves, people have been claiming that, they give you cancer, this, that, and the other. Hundreds of experiences show there is absolutely no truth in any of that. Radio waves are entirely safe, and 5G waves are entirely safe, and they have absolutely nothing to do with coronavirus. And coronavirus is not a secret drug invented by the Chinese People's National Liberation Army or by the CIA or anybody else.
No, exactly right. However, the trade deals and the future relationship, not only economically, but I suppose culturally with China and the rest of the world, is going to be under severe scrutiny, isn't it?
Very much so. And I think, we have a Prime Minister fighting for his life, but now restored and getting better. We hope he gets better very quickly, because one of the things that he has really got to decide very soon is what our attitude towards China should be. He's facing a huge amount of flack, particularly from some of the most ardent Brexiters in his own party, Ian Duncan Smith, Liam Fox, David Davis, and Anne, who are very anxious that his decision, the decision he took some weeks ago, that we would go with Huawei in order to roll out 5G as quickly as possible in the UK, that decision should somehow be rescinded. And of course, in the United States of America, President Trump and his administration is also putting huge pressure on the British government to turn that decision around and say no to Huawei.
Yes, because while at the time of the kind of Theresa May prime ministership, it appeared that Huawei was really the only place to go, presumably all bets are now off in every simple way about the economy, about the way that we structure our infrastructure from this point on, the big spending projects that we may or may not now be able to afford to do. This is almost like ground zero for a restart of the government once we get out of this.
Well, I think that's exactly so, and I suspect that if Boris Johnson were having this conversation with you rather than Anthony Glees, he would say that is the precise reason why we need to get cracking with 5G, why we need to roll it out as soon as possible. And I myself think he is right. I would not wish this country to be faced with the choice that it is faced. I would wish that this country could work together with other countries in the European Union to develop a European 5G network. But it's not going to happen. It is simply not going to happen. If we can't work together with them over the supply of ventilators, we're not going to be able to work with them over 5G. So there is no alternative, in my view, and precisely because we have taken such a huge, and will take such a huge economic hit from the fight against coronavirus, 5G is going to be vital to kickstart the British economy, the British service economy. 80% of what we do is services, not to mention the rollout for education, higher education, schooling. It's all going to transform the way these things are delivered, and we can't afford to say no. And I think Boris Johnson's absolutely right on that.
Yeah, and what presumably will happen next, right, is once certain countries begin to lift their lockdowns, as they are starting to do in Europe, we will find some method of doing so as well. In your view, what would be the first sort of thing that might be released, if you like?
Well, I mean, oddly enough, I also think 5G, which we don't have, but good communications is also going to be vital in addressing and managing the coronavirus problem and future pandemics that undoubtedly will come our way. I mean, look what we've suffered from in the United Kingdom, an absence of data.
Yeah.
We haven't known how many people are sick. You know, it is incredible in the era of Facebook, in the information age, that we still don't know. We may know in a few minutes, of course, but up to this time, we have not known how many people have perished in our care homes from this fearful virus. So we need connectivity. We need data. We need to understand how to use data. And not only in terms of our health, because with 5G, we could know in real time if there are sufferers in our vicinity. And if you fall into one of the endangered categories here, you would know to keep away.
Right. So would that
say, get the hell out of here?
Yeah, I mean, would that have some bearing on that story we did yesterday from the Sunday Times about the app that Apple and Google have been working on, which is the tracing app? So that would work with 5G only, would it, or would it work without?
Well, it would work far best, far more efficiently with 5G because of the speed of 5G.
Right.
So you might get the information 10 minutes after you sat next to somebody with coronavirus on the train.
Right.
That's not much good. You get it in real time. You can slip away before those viruses have had a chance to shed themselves on your skin.
Yes.
And you know, this sounds like science fiction, but it isn't.
But it does, because, I mean, you know, going forward again, after this is all over, and I sort of say those words sort of slightly, you know, with trepidation, because I'm not sure it will ever be, in you know, inverted commas, over. But, you know, does that kind of surveillance and that kind of technology and that kind of AI, I suppose you might even call it, then govern our lives?
Well, I think it does. And people like me have been saying for some time, you know, you've got the civil liberties lobby, you've got people like David Davis who don't like the idea of the collection of data. You've got people like Ian Duncan Smith and Liam Fox who don't like the idea of China, and I don't like the idea. Nobody in their right mind likes the idea of China, but that's not what it's about. It's about our national interest. It's about keeping our people safe, and we in Britain have always been the fastest in Europe to exploit new technology with debit cards, all that kind of stuff, years before other countries like Germany had it. And 5G is the only show in town. And that is the issue. For education, you asked me, you know, what should, after health, what should it be? It should be our schools. It should be our universities. Now, some of that teaching in the future will be done via 5G. There is no doubt. Higher education, universities, people don't need to go off.
Exactly. I mean, if you think about the fact that this virus probably will be with us for a long time, you know, I think there's going to have to be a change in the way that we travel. There's going to have to be a change in the way that rush hour is handled in terms of trains, because obviously it's going to now be a bad idea to be crushed into trains with thousands of other people, you know, breathing all over you. And so, you know, the more people that can stay away from going to a workplace at a particular time, the better. And certainly I've been talking to different parts of the world through this crisis, and over in the UAE, for example, all of the schools are still holding lectures for the children and lessons for the children. You know, they wake up in the morning, they register online, there's a camera, they can see the teacher can see them, you know, and it is still the classroom scenario is going on online.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm told that in Finland, for example, where, of course, they made Nokia phones in those days, world
Those
leaders,
were the days.
Kids for the past 2 years have not had a school book. Every secondary school child gets the choice between a tablet or a laptop.
Right.
They can keep it forever, and it's fully loaded with all the books, all the stuff they need in order to graduate, and they're happy with it. Of course, you need social interaction. That's why we've got to, you know, get masks, get all this stuff as quickly as possible. But in the future, real-time electronic delivery of instruction is going to be a very important adjunct and save people. Why spend, you know, vast thousands on going away to university.
Yes.
When the university can come to you at home.
Well, think of
via
the
5G.
savings in terms of just things like student loans. You know, you don't have to pay for a hall of residence. I mean, it might be that you don't fancy doing it from your bedroom, but hey, you know, it's a lot cheaper as an alternative.
It's a lot cheaper, and you know, I'm an elderly man. When I was 20, your parents simply wouldn't let you have girls or whatever in your room. And being a student, going away, it meant you could kind of develop your own adult life. These days, parents couldn't care less about that kind of thing. So the importance of rolling out this stuff as quickly as possible to get this country on its feet again is huge. It doesn't mean we like China. It doesn't mean we trust Huawei 100%. We have to rely on our spooks. They say they're happy with it. That, I think, should be the end of the story. It's a glimmer of hope. And you know, we're not going to change the Chinese system by saying no to Huawei. They're not going to change the way they do things. We are not in a position to force them to give up communism, but we are in a position to benefit from their technological expertise.
Sure.
And we should go for it.
Sure. But on the other hand, the Americans might take a different tack on that, and the Americans are already talking amongst themselves about how can we maybe legally go after China for spreading this terrible virus, because that's where it emanated from. And if Donald Trump does get in for another 4 years, I'm not even sure there's going to be an election, to be honest, this year. But if there is one, he's going to win it because Biden's got no chance. And in the end, you know, Trump could mess around with China, and he could put pressure on them.
But the thing about Trump is that he is totally unpredictable. He really does say the first thing that comes into his head. And he knows that, yes, there is a danger of Chinese espionage via Huawei, not because necessarily Huawei want it, but because the law in China imposes an obligation should the Chinese government want it. But equally, Trump knows that if we were to take an American system, Motorola, for example, not that it's up and running, it would be the Americans who would have control over our communications. We are between a rock and a hard place. People are going to have to choose, I think, between China, that still has a lot of money to invest in Europe, and America, that wants to put America first, with a president who loses his rag at the first opportunity and is just as likely to cut the kill switch on Britain if he has it.
Well, that's the other thing, though. But I mean, if he's in the midst of an election battle and he takes a hard line on China, his supporters are going to love that, and he will be catapulted into the White House for another 4 years, even faster.
Well, it is true that he's tried, hasn't he, with coronavirus all the time to talk about China. It's the China. It's their flu. And
very good, that. Listen, I do the impressions on this show.
Sorry about that. But no, you know, he has seen a way of weaponizing this virus as if it was not already lethal. And yes, the Chinese made terrible mistakes, which we've
they lied about it as well.
But they are now beginning to understand that they have got to behave responsibly. And, as I say, they've got the cash, because we've been buying things from China for so long. Yeah. They've got the currency to inject into Europe. They are already doing it. I mean, people don't know the extent to which China has rebuilt ports in Israel, in Greece, in the Netherlands. The infrastructure projects that they do are enormous.
Oh, well, they're all over Africa, aren't they? I mean, and the South Pacific.
All over Africa. And yes, we should keep our distance. This is not a marriage anybody is proposing. It's not a love affair. But what Trump has achieved, I think, is that there are people to whom he's close in the British Conservative Party who are using our utter contempt for the Chinese political system to pull the carpet out from under our feet when it comes to getting going again with our trade. It's ironic that the hardest Huawei opponents are also the hardest Brexiters, but it's precisely because we Brexited that we need this stuff. And I think that, you know, who knows about Trump? You're absolutely right. We don't hear anything from Biden. It's hard to see how he can win a presidential election if he doesn't come out of his bunker.
Well, as long as you just watch him on his adverts, he's fine. But as soon as he actually starts opening his mouth and appearing live, he's absolutely dead man, you know, hopeless.
That's right.
There we are. Well, listen, Professor, fantastic talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. Professor Anthony Glees there, doing his own impersonation of Donald Trump. I don't really do... I have done Trump in the past, but I mostly stick to Meghan. Because today, Harry, we've run out of avocados and we're stuck in Hollywood again. This is Talk Radio.